Hello, everybody. Great to see you all. Okay, well, I'm just going to get started. Welcome, everybody, to the meeting of Carpinteria Birdwatchers for whatever day today is, June 18th, I think. And today we're going to talk about owls, which are one of my favorites. I think any self-respecting birdwatcher has to like owls because they're just so amazing. Just the usual beginning of the meeting boilerplate. We ask that you keep yourself muted when you're not talking, but I ask that you go ahead and unmute and chime in if you have comments or questions, or if I make a silly mistake and you can correct me in real time. I would very much appreciate you interrupting me for something like that. Our co-hosts are Tom Beland and Jenny Slaughter and Laurel Luby. Laurel is keeping an eye on the YouTube live stream, which is also running and which is available afterwards if people can't watch it in real time. But it's great if you can watch via Zoom, because then we can be more interactive. Just a few announcements at the top of the meeting. So this is something that Amrita Sam emailed about, and then Tom sent the message out to the group. The Los Padres Forest Watch is a group that keeps track of environmental issues involving the Los Padres National Forest. And they sent out an alert. There's a sort of a fast track logging proposal for the Pine Mountain area, which is not in Santa Barbara County. It's just east of Highway 33, but it's some really unique sort of upper elevation habitat of the type that we'll be talking about tonight as we talk about some of these owls that like to live up at the high elevation parts of Santa Barbara County. And they've got some good information there. There's a 30-day public comment period that we're in now that actually ends on June 30th. And it's certainly worth taking a look at if habitat is something that you are concerned about, which if you love birds like I love birds, then you should keep an eye on things that might affect their habitat adversely. Also, another announcement is that Paul Lehman's book, his free downloadable ebook, Birds of Santa Barbara County, has been updated. He is updating it every year lately, and June seems to be when the updates come out. So the new edition for 2020 is now out, and you can download it. And I recommend you check it out. It's a great source of information about every bird species ever recorded in Santa Barbara County and where you find them and how common or rare they are. I rely on it a lot. We'll be talking about some information from that book tonight as we talk about owls. So links to all these things are in the description of the YouTube live stream and also on the blog post for this meeting at the carpwithoutcars.org blog. So that's where you can find all that stuff. But first, before we do owls, we have something really fun that Tom and Laurel spearheaded, which I'm very appreciative of. And that is our backyard bird count. So over the past week, we encouraged people, if they wanted, strictly optional, to put in an eBird list, or at least make a checklist of birds seen from your backyard, your front yard, sort of around your house. And I think, is it 5 or 6 people submit? I think we have 5 lists or 6 lists. So we're going to go through those one at a time and just kind of highlight what people have been seeing. I was excited. I thought it was fun. There's some fun photos there and some fun birds to talk about. So those of you who submitted a list, that's great. I really appreciate it. And we will get, I'm just looking at the chat that Butterfly sent. Thanks, Butterfly. So we'll take a look at that. So to do that, I need to share my screen. And before I do that, any comments, input, questions, anything someone wants to share right off the top? Brody, I see you have unmuted.
I have a little book that I have. I have a little slate, so I just traced it onto here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a little bird identification book that I put down. I go onto eBird, put down some identification facts, and then from there I go on to behaviors and other stuff.
That's excellent. That's great. Yeah, I did a similar project when I was 12. I remember, when I first got the birding bug in a big way, I wrote up my own field guide, and I learned a lot, and it was a really valuable exercise. So that's great. I'm really happy to hear you doing that.
Thanks.
Anyone else have stuff to share?
I put in a link in the chat that's on the SB Nature website, and they actually have birding references for youth and for adults, just in case anyone wanted to check it out.
Excellent. Thank you, Butterfly. I appreciate that. And then, I was mentioning the co-host. I should also mention that Butterfly has been helping to promote these meetings. And I see we actually have a pretty sizable meeting in terms of attendance. And I think that is, in all likelihood, due in part to Butterfly's efforts to promote the meeting. So thank you, Butterfly. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Penny, you were saying something? I think you're muted. Anyway, if you wish to speak, unmute and share what you were going to share. I'm going to, however, what am I going to do? I'm going to share my screen. And let's see.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Uh,
Is that
real-
Greg?
The Independent today had last week's schedule.
Okay.
And so it, of course, came up that was last week when you go to Zoom. So I went to your website and found today. So some people may have that same problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that it changes, and there wasn't a link. I wasn't sure what link to put in there because the newspapers need it so far ahead, and it wasn't there. So I'm not sure how we want to work around that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's discuss it via email or something offline outside the meeting, because the link does change from week to week, and we'll figure out what we can do to make that work. But thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so if I've done this correctly, you should be seeing my screen now. And I'm looking at eBird, and I am logged in as the Carpinteria Birdwatchers eBird account. So I see a thumbs up from Brody. Thank you, Brody. So that appears to be working. Okay, so I'm going to go to the My eBird page again for this list, and we have for this account. And this account, which is just shared checklists over the last week from Carpinteria Birdwatchers members, we have 40 species on our life list. So we're doing okay. I think that's pretty good for our collective backyards. And if I can, sweet talk a few of you into joining in, then maybe we can get even more birds. I'm just going to go ahead and look at these checklists real quick. And I guess I will start at the oldest one. So these are newest at the top, oldest at the bottom. And the first one, I think this was Jim's from Shepherd Mesa. And Jim, are you in the meeting? I have a limited number of thumbnails I'm looking at now, so I don't know if you're there or not.
Oop, I haven't seen Jim.
No, we don't see Jim?
No.
Okay, well, I'll just talk about Jim's list. So Jim has a great list from up there on Shepherd Mesa, and he had 20 species. And, I've been doing a lot of backyard birding lately with the coronavirus restrictions. And if I can get up to 20 species in my backyard, I figure I'm doing a pretty good job. Jim has a birdier backyard than I do. There he is. I see you there, Jim. Let's see, you're muted. Can we unmute you? Is there yeah, I think I just unmuted you. No, or I tried to unmute you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, I hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So so this list, this was last Friday, and I guess there was something weird where when you first put it in, it had the wrong time, so it got flagged as a nocturnal list, but it was at 3 p.m., right?
Yes, in fact, well, just to pass along to all of you, this is my first attempt at submission, and I learned a few things along the way. And my wife and I were spending the afternoon out in the yard. Started at 3, just sort of not looking at the sky all the time or in the trees all the time. We just sort of like, oh, let's just keep a running list. And then I didn't get around to submitting it until that night, and I realized immediately that it popped up as nocturnal, of course, because I submitted it at 9 at night. And I had to go back in through your guidance and Tom Beelan's guidance. I went back in and corrected the time. And but it was kind of just over 2 or 3 hours of just kind of doing yard work and seeing what happened. And a lot showed up
Yeah, I see.
in those few hours. It was great.
So I'm curious, you have two Cooper's hawks. So did you see them both at the same time, or an adult and an immature, or?
Well, that's a great question. We saw one landed and called to another one who responded. So that's, I guess that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounded like it was a pair for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I wonder if they're nesting up there. That would be pretty
Well,
exciting.
we have a neighbor who has a number of palm trees, and he routinely has a nesting pair of Cooper's hawks, like right next door. And so I haven't talked to him recently, but anyway.
Okay, well, that's great. In the interest of being speedy and having time for owls, I'm gonna move on, but I didn't mean to. I'm not dissing your list. That's a great list.
Oh,
And again, I'd love to go birdwatch there in your yard at some point in time. Okay, so the next one we had was 2 days later, and this is, I think, Tom and/or Laurel. And so you had a bunch of species there, and you also have a yard that I envy greatly in terms of your bird access. You're right up there next to Carpinteria Creek, so you've got that wonderful riparian corridor right off your backyard, right?
We do, and it's been a lot of fun. The two birds we enjoy the most are the white-breasted nuthatches. We're feeding them with peanut butter, and really, they love the peanut butter. But the special birds after your class on finches was the purple finches.
Oh yeah,
which
let's pull
was
that photo.
really, that's the female.
Yep.
And we weren't sure, so we studied them a lot. I was able to get a photograph, and we have a couple in the yard, which is really neat.
Yeah, and that's great. Yeah, and it's got, all the things we talked about. It's got the bolder head pattern than the house finch, and the straight Kuhlman on the upper bill, and kind of the whitish, background color on the breast. So yeah, that's awesome. And and then the male, I kind of went back and forth on the male a little bit, but really I think, color wise, that really looks good for purple finch. Were those two birds kind of associating with each other?
Yes.
Yeah.
They stayed with each other the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
So yeah, that was very cool.
All right. So let's see, I'm gonna move on. The next one, Seacoast Way. Whose was this? Patricia Mickelson. So is Patricia in the meeting? Yeah, I should probably have the list of participants in front of me so I can more easily tell on my own. I do not see anyone who looks obviously like Patricia, so I'll just talk about her list. So she had, a very respectable list, 4 hooded orioles, which is always fun. We're at the time of year when they've bred, and now you get the offspring are zipping around with the parents, and they're just chattering, and they're so colorful. Anyway, yeah, so very much appreciate getting that list. And let's see, I'm going to just keep on going. Then we have another list from Tom and Laurel, which I think is okay. We didn't really specify the rules, but I think, a good rule is like 1 list per member per week would be good. And so we got one from Tom and one from Laurel, right?
Laurel did hers in the morning. I did mine in the afternoon, even though we were together. So
this is your list.
Yes, and the thing that's special lately is the hooded orioles. All the fledglings are coming out, and they're just starting to multiply. So we last year, I think at one point we had 20 to 25 hooded orioles. So I expect that just to keep growing and growing. And that could be an exaggeration a little bit, but and then the other thing that I've been noticing a lot is the fledglings of the finches and everything are actually walking right in front of us on the yard and picking away and then fluttering next to their parents. So pretty neat.
It's an exciting time. Yeah. I mean, it's not as exciting in terms of rarity showing up or, the sort of really exciting, like unusual things happening, but you've got that nesting behavior and the new babies are out and about, and it's fun that way. So there's always something going on, and it's a fun time of year. Let's see. So then we have my list. And so I usually when I'm bird watching in my backyard, I don't bother taking photos. But I thought, well, for this list, I'll take the camera, and I actually spent some time trying to see what was worth seeing out there. And so that was a lot of fun. I've got Eurasian collared doves, Anna's hummingbird. So this, I'm going to say, is probably a female Allen's hummingbird. I think I put it in as just Rufus Allen's, yeah, which is me being lazy. I mean, they're Allen's this time of year, but I just don't want to bother keeping track of, is it the precise date when I can just safely assume that they're Allen's hummingbirds. I like that when she turned towards me and you got that little flash of the little bit of sort of shiny gorget feathers that the female has. Flybys by a Western gull, so always got to work on those gulls. And if you can identify them at a distance, I feel like that's worth doing. This was fun. So this bird flew straight overhead and I couldn't see it very well, but I just said, well, I better get photos, and started snapping photos. And in a few, you can just barely see enough of it, I think, to comfortably say that it's a great blue heron. There it is in the distance. It kind of turned a little bit and gave me a better angle. And then this got me very excited. So, as soon as I saw this bird, just the flight characteristics, I knew it was something kind of fun, and then looked at it with the binoculars for just a second and said, oh yeah, I got to take photos. So I started taking photos. So this is a peregrine falcon that came just, zipping by my backyard. And I've seen it once since then. And then my wife saw it when she was out walking our dog. So they're around. And I have to think they're nesting somewhere, around the Carpinteria Valley, up in the cliffs maybe, or somewhere. And that's a bird that, I'll always get excited when I see a peregrine falcon. I really think of that as a celebrity of birds. Local black phoebe. And this, I think, is probably one of this year's offspring of the black phoebe. It's kind of doesn't have the nice shiny black plumage, which is more of an immature phoebe thing. I suspect. I didn't get a good look at it, but that's my suspicion. And then we have our local corvid caching peanuts, lurking in the hedge, about to make his or her move on my peanuts, and they're in the act. Distant crows, it's a block away, but I figure if I can see it from my yard, eBird says I can count it from my yard. So I was pulling in some distant birds to get my species count up. Here we've got a starling down in the corner and a hooded oriole up top. Oh, and the local finches. So here's the house finch to give you the comparison to Tom's purple finch. More of that beige background color. Thank you again, Brody, for teaching me that word. And there she
One
is
thing
eating.
that I did see that's a big difference is with the females is a little white patch right above their eye.
Yeah, so on the purple finch, they've got that white eyebrow. Yeah. And again, in the house finch, it's a much blander face pattern, usually. There's, variation. But yeah, there's the male. And California towhee blending in really well underneath the feeder. And another view of that oriole. And that is it for my photos. All right, so I think we have two more lists. Oh, so this is Jenny's list. So Jenny, this is a great list. You added white-throated swift to our collective total. So that was good that we got white-throated swifts thanks to you. Mm-hmm. And let's see, this was Monday and you spent an hour. So that's pretty good. Making a good effort for the group. And I like your northern rough-winged swallows too. Most of the swallows I get are cliff swallows. Occasionally I'll get a northern rough-winged around here, but.
I'm right by the Douglas Preserve, and both the swifts and the swallows are pretty much over my house every day too.
Cool. That is very neat. Okay, and this is Suzanne's list, I think. Yeah, Suzanne also has some great photos. So is Suzanne in the meeting?
Yes, I'm here.
Yay. So I really appreciate, as I've emailed you before, I think, about how much I enjoy looking at your photos, because I look at all the photos uploaded in eBird in Santa Barbara County every day, and yours are always a treat. So I love these shots you got here. You've got your male and his hummingbird. And it's a kind of a fun thing too. You know, if you don't have the really fast shutter speed, the hummingbird's wings do really interesting things in the photos.
Yeah, I like it like that. I do it
Yeah.
purposefully because I could have it all picture perfect, sharp, but I love seeing the movement. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just fun.
Oh, and there's you got a great shot of the gorget, you know, right head on, so it's reflecting all the color. And then a female, presumably. And a female bush tit. So, you know, the females have the light irises and the males have all dark irises.
I
So,
didn't know. Interesting.
so there's your,
So much.
yeah.
That's
And,
cool.
well, and it's fun because, you know, they're so fearless. Like you can get a really close look at them sometimes. You know, they'll be right there next to you, or in binoculars, you can totally pick out those eyes. And your cool house finch, kind of showing that interesting variation in the color on the male house finch, right? This one has a lot of yellowish or orangish, you know, more so than the red that you usually see.
Yeah,
Which
I
is-
used that one, which had just the golden crown, and that was such a special one. I wonder whether it morphed into this one now. I'm not sure, but it was always special.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, as we were reading in Ken Kaufman's book last time, he was talking about, you know, if you study all those house finches at your feeders, you'll see that variation. Here we've got our female.
Mhm.
And kind of a different look. You know, she's not quite as smudgy as the ones I'm used to seeing in terms of the streaking. So again, interesting in terms of the variation. And your towhee,
Mhm.
California towhee. I think that's it on your photos.
Yeah, and that there are not so many birds. Sometimes I see more. So, and we're not supposed to put out bird feeders except for hummingbird feeders, so a little bit restricted. Also, one, it's okay.
So this is like the homeowners association restricts what you can do. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that is it for the. Let's see. I'll stop the screen share. So that's it for the list that were shared this week. But thank you everybody a lot. I really enjoyed looking at them. We have 40 species, as I said, collectively for our group. So, you know, if somebody wants to submit their yard list for this next week, maybe we can get that up. And you know, just keep looking, see what's out there. Okay, well, any other questions or feedback before we go on to our feature topic of owls?
I put a question in the chat, and I'm curious if I was to put a little bird feeder in my little garden, I want to make sure that what I'm feeding them is healthy for them. I noticed that you would put peanuts, some people put seeds, some people put sugar water, and you know, I don't want to make them junk food either. So
Yeah.
how do we know what would be okay?
So, you know, I'm not a super expert, but my understanding is the recommendations I see are the black oil sunflower seeds. You know, those are very popular with the finches. The little Niger seeds, they're sort of like thistle seeds, the little tiny seeds, and those you put them in like a fabric sock. If you put them in a regular feeder, they'll just run all out because they're so small. They you know, flow like water. But those are really good for the goldfinches, and the house finches will go after those too. Pine siskins, if you've got any of those around, they'll go for those. And then the raw peanuts in the shell, the jays really love for, you know, caching purposes. They'll clean out all your peanuts in an hour and stash them away all over your yard. You know, jelly feeders for the orioles, which I've never tried, but I know Tom and Laurel do. And, you know, grape jelly is very popular with them. I'm getting some, like, I'm hearing someone talking, but I can't understand what they're saying.
Is that Penny trying to talk?
Yeah, it looks like Penny's unmuted, but I'm not understanding it. So apologies. Maybe try again in a minute. Maybe their internet connection will get better and we can hear it. And let's see. Oh, and then the hummingbird food. Yeah, and that's, you know, the typical advice on that is it's 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. You don't need dye in it. and in the hummingbird feeder, and you just mix it up. And if you change it frequently, that's good.
Okay.
I sometimes I'm a little lazy and I leave my hummingbird food out probably longer than I should, but yeah, take it out, clean it out. In general, if you can keep everything as clean as possible, that'll help, keep disease from spreading.
Okay, thank you.
And the one thing I've heard recommended, to avoid is the sort of mixed wild bird seed assortment that you can buy, like all mixed together. There tends to be a lot of filler in that. They tend to be a lot of seeds that the birds don't actually even like, and they just kind of throw it out and it makes a big mess.
Oh, okay.
So,
Thank you.
okay, yeah. Any other questions or feedback? Or yeah, Brody, I see your hands up.
What were the seed? What were the seeds again?
So I said black oil sunflower seeds, and you can get these like at pet food stores, or Wild Birds Unlimited is a store that sells bird stuff. Or you can probably order it online and get it delivered. But black oil sunflower seed and Niger seed, N-Y-G-E-R spelled.
N-Y-G-E-R.
Yeah, and raw peanuts. Yeah. Anyway, and as I said, I'm not really an expert. If you go online and research a little bit, you'll probably find someone who knows a lot more than I do very quickly, and you can get good advice that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to go on then, and we'll talk about owls, which is a fun topic always. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen again. Oh, except I did it wrong. I'm going to share my screen one more time. I will share my computer sound, so because it's going to be very important to hear the sounds on this, because a lot of owl content is about learning their vocalizations. Okay. I'll drag this over here. And if I have done this correctly, you should now be seeing the owls, or a owl, an owl. Okay, great. So, owls are great. Owls are mysterious and charismatic, and I, can't really be poetic about it, but I just always get very excited when I get to see an owl. And it's kind of rare that I get to see an owl. And you hear them more often than you see them because they're nocturnal. And when they're out in the daylight, they're typically very well concealed. And in fact, that's, I think, the next, let's see if I can get this going. Yeah, the next photo here. So this is a good example of, this is a big, obvious owl. This is a great horned owl. And it's just right there in plain sight. And it's practically invisible because they do such a great job of blending in with the surroundings. They will elongate their bodies or compress their bodies. They'll, tuck themselves into little nooks. They'll keep their eyes closed so you don't see their eyes, obviously, so that it's just very difficult to see them. But they are out there. Just a fun fact. Again, I'm going to go pretty quickly through the owl content because I wanted to do that fun, backyard birding content, but that means this is going to be a quick presentation on owls. Just one fun fact about owls. Most birds, when they're laying their eggs, it takes a day or so to produce a new egg, and the female will lay an egg, but not start sitting on it yet. They won't start incubating the eggs until she has a full clutch. Like she'll lay an egg, and they'll lay another egg, and then another egg, and eventually they'll get them all there, and then they'll start incubating. And the idea there is that all the eggs develop at the same time. They all hatch at the same time. It allows the parent bird to kind of manage their brood more efficiently if they're all, at the same stage. But owls don't do that. Owls start incubating as soon as they lay the first egg. And it means if you see a nest with baby owls in it, they're going to be at slightly different stages of development. There's going to be relatively advanced ones and relatively, younger looking ones. And you can see that in this image. So the owl, the baby owl on the right here is a little younger, maybe a day or 2 days younger than this sibling on the left. It's just a little older. And you can see it's kind of fledged out a little more, a little bigger. you know, it's an interesting sort of insurance policy, I guess. You know, the later hatched owls, the smaller owls, sometimes get shoved out of the nest as the brood is growing up and there's not enough room for them. But sometimes, you know, something comes along and preys on one of the older ones, and then the younger ones are still there and you know, have their chance. Another sort of fun fact about owls is, again, you know, they're hard to see, but you can often see their pellets. So if you find an owl roost, you know, they eat their rodents or whatever it is that they're eating. Often it's rodents for the larger owls. And then the indigestible parts, they cough up these pellets. So you'll get these pellets with fur and bones in them. And if you're a certain type of person who really enjoys, you know, finding things out about these owls, you can take those pellets and dissect them and see what's in there. And that's what this user did, who posted this photo to Wikipedia. And you can just sit there and you can count the jawbone and say, oh, you know, looks like there were 6 different gophers in these pellets, and parts of a skull and parts of the leg bones. And a fun thing you can do in your spare time if you have owls in the area.
I wanted to say, before all of this happened,
Yeah.
We dissected owl pellets at school in science.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did it look like this? Was it different than this?
Yeah, there was only like one animal. It was like a rat or something. The skull was actually together, and it was like weird. I kept scaring all the girls with it.
Skulls can be scary.
What is the time length from the time that they eat a creature to the time that they'll cough up a pellet about?
Excellent question. I have no idea. I assume fairly quickly, but yeah, you know, a day maybe. I really don't know. I could research it. I'll try and research it and come back next week with a better answer. So thanks for the excellent question, but you know, I'm not really a bird expert. I'm an enthusiastic amateur. So if it's something I've looked up, maybe I can remember it. But if not, I tend not to. So this is a video. I actually have a link to this video in the description.
Screen. Is there something I could do?
I'm sorry, what's the question about the screen?
I don't have any picture.
It
says John Callender has started screen sharing, but I don't have a picture of you doing that.
It sounds like Andrea. Is this Andrea?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Is anyone else having the same problem? Can you unmute and let me know? No, I'm seeing head shakes. I think it's basically working for most folks.
Okay.
So
I'll just
maybe try logging out and logging back in again, and Tom or
Okay.
Jenny can let you in from the waiting room. I'm not sure that's going to help, but
yeah. Okay.
so good luck.
Thanks.
So this is a video that I'm going to skip just in the interest of saving time, but there is a link to it in the description of the YouTube live stream and on the blog page for this meeting. And it's cool. I mean, it's a little bit kind of, I don't know, violent. This is a nest of some hawks, and an eagle owl comes flying in the middle of the night and grabs one of them. And so, you know, it's not gory, but it's dramatic. Anyway, just to save time. If you want to look that up, again, you can find the link to the video and watch the video. So I want to get on and talk about the owls that we have in Santa Barbara County. So this is from eBird. This is the histogram showing the percentage of checklists that include each of these 10 owl species. These are all 10 owls that we get in Santa Barbara County. If you remember what these histograms look like with some other groups, like the crows and jays and stuff, these are some pretty thin lines. You know, a few of these, the barn owl, the great horned owl, the western screech-owl, maybe, you know, they're being seen a fair percentage of the time, or at least being reported in eBird, which may just be, you know, an audio, like someone heard them. They didn't necessarily see them, but they can put them in the list just based on hearing them. But then a lot of these other species, those are some pretty thin little green lines. Those are some difficult birds to actually find and report, which is the story with owls. You know, they're hard to find. They're out there in the dark. You know, they're not active where people typically are, or where people are at the same time when people are active. So they can be tough. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. And there are, as I say, there are 10 species. 4 of them The 4 I'm going to talk about first are the 4 that I have seen myself in Santa Barbara County, and then 4 more that I have not seen, but I have heard in Santa Barbara County, and then 2 more that I'm still trying for. And I'm not going to show as much detail as I normally show about where the birds are found in Santa Barbara County. And this reflects a concern about owl conservation that is worth mentioning. So if you want to see owls or even hear owls, the sort of focused, efficient way to do that is what's called owling. And owling is you go out at night in an area where you believe the owls might be, in the kind of habitat where they might be, and you play recordings of that species of owl, and you listen for owls to respond to it. Or sometimes they'll actually come to you, if they're being territorial and they want to chase this intruder out of their territory, they'll come up close to you to investigate. And it's a way that you can see owls and you can hear them, but it's also potentially fairly disruptive of the owl. And depending on the species and the circumstances, it can make them leave a roost. They'll be like, oh, I don't want to stick around here. There's another owl around here. Because owls, are territorial and they will attack each other. So it is generally a thing that if you're concerned, well, how to put this? For myself, my own birding ethics, my own approach to it is that I want to err on the side of not disturbing the owls. And so I tend not to use playback to try and bring owls in. I have done it a few times. If you're part of some organized survey that's trying to track owl populations, then I figure that's fair game. And if I can get associated with an organized survey that's going out to listen for owls, I count myself very fortunate. I used playback to get a response from a northern Pygmy-Owl for the Carpinteria Christmas count, which again was like one time in the year. And I figured that was probably okay and probably not disturbing that owl too much. But it's something to be careful about and to think about before you do it, I think. And there are, if you're putting information out there in eBird, or you're putting information out there like these meetings where this information is going out there and anyone can watch it on YouTube, I think it's appropriate to have a little bit of a cautious approach and not necessarily publicize exactly where these owls are. So if you're interested, and who wouldn't be, in seeing or hearing owls, I would encourage you to research it. There's information out there. I'd encourage you to, use a more passive approach as much as you can to just, go into the habitat and listen for the owls, not necessarily use playback. And, just be thoughtful birders, as I'm sure you are already. You're not messing up the habitat. You're not disturbing the birds. You're out there just, appreciating them without bothering them too much. You were going to say something, Brody?
Yeah, I wanted to ask are there specific owls that aren't that territorial and they'll leave?
Yeah, and I'll discuss that as I go through it. Again, I'm not a super expert. Like, I know the ones that people are more sensitive about, and I'll mention that as we go through. But in general, the ones that are rarer, the ones that tend to avoid humans more are probably the ones to be more careful about. But let's just get through it and start talking about them. So here is an owl species. This is the one that had the thickest line in that Santa Barbara County histogram. And I should play a recording so you hear what it sounds like, because this is, again, the way that one will tend to experience this owl. Are you guys hearing that? So that's a recording by Lance Benner that I got from Zeno Canto. And this is, of course, a great horned owl. This is the you know, if you have a big owl hooting in your neighborhood, probably a great horned owl. Those are the ones we have the most of. Here's its overall range. So it's throughout North America, not really migratory. You know, they're hanging around here year round. And they're fun, but I'm going to go fast because I want to get through all 10 owls. So here's another one that's also relatively seeable or hearable. Have this kind of, that's Marcello Giordini Felitti made that recording. And you know, that scream that they make, I don't know if you watch like ghost chasers shows, you know, those documentary shows, pseudo documentary shows on TV. I've seen more than once, I mean, I don't watch them a lot, but I've seen more than once where they're out there at a night at a spooky house and they hear a scream and, oh, it's the scream of the ghost. It's like, no, it's a barn owl. You just heard. This is a barn owl. So that scream is one of their vocalizations that you hear a lot. Another one is this kind of twittering sound. This is a recording by Dan Lane. And I am not positive, but I have heard that twittering sound, that's echolocation, that they're making that sound and listening to the echoes, and it's helping them fly around. Okay, let's go to our next. Oh, and there's their range again, pretty much throughout North America. They don't get as far north as the great horned owl. They like to nest in structures. That's why they're called barn owls, because they often nest in barns. All right, this fun little owl. I've seen this owl, but I don't think I've ever heard it vocalizing. But this is what it sounds like. This is Richard Webster's recording. And then here's a recording by David Ricardo Rodriguez Villamil. And this is a burrowing owl. And they do like burrowing. They live in prairie dog towns and areas where there's prairie dogs. But we tend to get them in the wintertime. You know, it shows them year round in our area, but as far as I know, they're mostly seen in Santa Barbara County in the winter. And, you know, if you watch eBird, people put in reports of them and they're usually pretty specific about, oh, it's in this one spot. And so you just, you know, you can go there and kind of hang out and look for it. It's a good chance you'll see a burrowing owl. All right, here's one more species of the ones that I've actually seen. And here is a recording of its vocalization by Bruce Lagerquist. And here's another recording by Nunes da Costa. And this is a short-eared owl. And this one is fun because they come out when it's light out. You know, they're crepuscular. They tend to be out in the twilight, in the morning twilight or the evening twilight. And again, if you watch your eBird reports, you know, they're pretty regular in certain places, and you can go out there and get a look at them. There's not a lot of them around, but you know, one shows up every once in a while. These are some very bad photos that I took of short-eared owls. As you can see, they're highly migratory, and really we only get them in the winter time. So they wouldn't be out there now, but if you, again, keep track on eBird when they show up again, you know, you don't have to travel too far to see one typically. Okay, so now we're on to the 4 species that I've heard but not seen. And this one I know from talking to Brody in a previous meeting, you have seen, so way to go. Good for you. And this one, here's a vocalization recorded by Lance Benner. And here's another recording by Lance Benner. This is the more typical vocalization that I'm used to hearing. So this is fun because there's actually a common porwheel in the background here, but that's not the bird we're talking about. We're talking about the bird in the foreground. There was a California towhee in there as well. So this is a Western Screech-Owl. And I thought these were fun photos because they kind of show you, again, how they can compress themselves, if that's what'll make them hard to see, or they can elongate themselves if that will help them, you know, look like a tree branch. And here's a human in the photo for scale. So you get a sense of what size a Western Screech-Owl is. They're quite small. And there's their range. There's also an Eastern Screech-Owl over the rest of the country, but our species that we have out here, it looks like this in terms of where you find them. And we do have them around here, you know, up in the hills a little bit, get up in some oak woodland or some riparian habitat coming down the canyons, you know, and go up there in the evening or in the morning before sunrise, and you've got a good chance of hearing that. So here is a fun bird. Okay, so this is what it sounds like. This is a recording by Lance Benner. This is the northern Pygmy-Owl. And I don't have a human in this one for scale, but the photographer who posted this image said, yeah, the bird was just a little bigger than my fist. So it gives you an idea of how small they are. But this is just a very cool little owl. Feeds on small birds. It's also active during the day, or, you know, crepuscular during the you know, twilight. A good way to see them reportedly, although I haven't been this fortunate myself, is they'll be mobbed by a group of small birds. So if you hear a bunch of small birds scolding, you know, kind of being very upset about something, go look at what they're upset about, and maybe it'll be a northern Pygmy-Owl. And here's their range. Here's another fun owl. This one's a little bigger. So this is a little bit smaller than a great horned owl, sort of a medium-sized owl. This is a recording by Bruce Lagerquist again. And then here's a recording that their young owls make that I heard one night up in Mammoth Lakes and had no idea what it was until I eventually found some examples of this. And this is a long-eared owl. And, you know, just as a personal note, this is the owl that in my excitement when I first started really being active in bird watching in Santa Barbara County, I was out, I'd done a whole day of bird watching, and I was really excited about all the cool birds I saw. And I ended up at this location where I heard what I was pretty sure was a long-eared owl, and I made a recording of it, and I was so excited, and I rushed on this SBCO birding list, and I posted a link to my recording, and I, you know, asked if people could confirm, you know, could this be a long-eared owl? And within about 10 minutes, I had a reply from one of the more expert birders in Santa Barbara County going, Yes, number one, but number two, we'd really like to not publicize that particular roost location. We'd like to keep that quiet so that you know, the owls aren't disturbed by overly enthusiastic owlers going out there and playing recordings a lot. So I felt bad about that, but posting to SPCO birding is kind of forever because it's out there in people's mailboxes, so I couldn't really take it back. But that was a good lesson for me and part of my learning to try and be more cautious about publicizing the locations of some of these sensitive species. And the long-eared owl is one of the more sensitive species. You know, it will leave a roost if it's hearing a lot of long-eared owl vocalizations in the neighborhood. So it's a, you know, good bird to listen for, but maybe don't go doing playback to try and draw it out. And here's its range. Again, a pretty migratory species, although I think the population we have around here does hang around all year. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to go back and do more research. I have to go consult Paul Lehman's book. He probably says in great detail, you know, what times of the year they're here. So this is a cute little owl. This is, again, one of the smaller sizes. It's hard to really get a sense of scale here, but this isn't, I guess this is maybe a little smaller than a Screech-Owl, maybe between a Pygmy-Owl and a Screech-Owl. And it sounds like this. This is a recording by Lance Benner. This is the northern saw-whet owl, which I assume is named because a saw-whet is like, you know, if you're sharpening your saw, you're drawing the saw across a whetstone, and it sounds like that, I guess. I don't know. But that's what they look like. And again, this is a species I've heard but not seen in Santa Barbara County. And I've only heard them once, so I felt very fortunate the one time I did hear them. And here's their range. Again, kind of move south in the wintertime, but not too much of a migrant otherwise. And I think they do hang around here all year long. All right, here is one more. So this is interesting. So this species is considered very sensitive. In fact, Zeno Canto does not make the recordings of this species available for download. So the recording, because again, they want to make it harder for people to take the recordings and go out in the field and use them to try and elicit a response from these owls, because it could potentially disturb the owls. So the recording I have here is actually one that was forwarded to me by Tom Beland, your co-host, from another local birder, Paul Cronshaw, that he heard at an undisclosed location. And I haven't even asked where it is. So, you know, what I don't know, you can't force me to reveal. But it's a very cool vocalization, and it sounds like this. Okay, one more time. And this is a spotted owl. And in terms of its range, so all these range maps I've taken from the All About Birds website that's associated with eBird and the Cornell lab. And it shows you ranges for 3 different subspecies of this owl. So the northern spotted owl is up here in the Washington and Oregon coastal mountains. California spotted owl, which is the one we have around here, is again up in the upper elevations of the mountains down where we are. And then the Mexican spotted owl. And the northern spotted owl is, you know, has been in the news a lot because it's an endangered species, and the restrictions on logging of old growth forest in the Pacific Northwest has been a political flashpoint as long as I've been paying attention to birds, you know, for decades now. But the concerns there is that, you know, these owls like old growth forest, especially up in that northern part of their range. So logging of that old growth forest has a negative impact on them. And let's see. Oh, and we have one more. We have one more owl. So here's a recording again by Lance Benner. This is another small owl. This one's a little bit smaller than the Screech-Owl that we were looking at earlier. And then here's another recording by Lance Benner of a slightly different vocalization that this owl makes. And this is a Flammulated Owl. And this one's range is really interesting. This is really a southern owl species. Right? It winters down in Central America, southern Mexico, and it only comes up here in the summertime. And it's up at higher elevations. You know, I think the only places it's been recorded in Santa Barbara County are up in the very, highest forested peaks we have here. And that is it for the owl content. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm 10 minutes past. I try and target these meetings for 45 minutes, and I don't think I've ever hit that target, but this is the closest I've come in a while. So I feel, like it was worth zipping through all that. So any questions or feedback? I know I went pretty fast. Anyone want to share any owl stories?
Fantastic. The last owl, what was the name of it?
The last owl was the Flammulated Owl. Sorry, I was so excited about wrapping it up early. I probably didn't even mention what its name was. Yeah, that was the Flammulated Owl.
I have a fun story.
Oh, please share.
One day, because we live, so we have some horses. So, there was darn it, my phone. I'm gonna. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, my mom saw an owl in the barbed wire. So she called the somewhere, I forget where, but we figured out earlier today because we were doing owls, so we figured out what it was. It was this September it was a great horned owl.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so
was it injured? Were you able to
yeah,
give
they
it some
took
help?
and they said it was okay.
Oh, great. Yeah, there's a couple of different animal
Yeah, they
rescue
cut the barbed
places.
wire.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But yeah, they saved it, but it was good. Yeah.
Excellent.
I didn't get to see it, but my mom told me the facts and I got it eventually. At first I thought it was the Screech-Owl or the long-eared owl, but then we figured out it was the great horned owl.
Well, on behalf of the owl, I thank you for your efforts to rescue it from the barbed wire. Thanks for doing that.
Did you tell them about the dead owl?
Oh, is this Andrea talking? No, I didn't mention this. So I wanted to ask you about this, Andrea. So just yesterday, I think, Andrea forwarded to me a photo of what looks like a barn owl that had become caught in the oil seeping from the old well site out of the Carpinteria Bluffs. Can you give me any more details about that, Andrea?
No, it looks very sad. It looks like it was flying low after something, and one wing has tar that's got up on its foot or its wing, and then it probably got stuck there, and then it just landed, and so it landed its whole chest in the tar, and its wings are spread out. And it was kind of surprising because I thought barn owls were bigger, and it's not a real big owl. Maybe it's a young one.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, that is really unfortunate. I mean, I wonder if maybe a rodent could have become trapped in the tar, and maybe that attracted the owl to the tar, or
it was flying after one low, and it just happened to accidentally get in the tar. I was thinking maybe, I don't know, if we put fencing around the tar, maybe it'd keep the other owl.
I haven't been there in the last few months, but that site was where there was, an old abandoned well, the Kitty Ballard well, and it was supposedly cleaned up by ConocoPhillips, and then it leaked some more, and then there was another cleanup. And my understanding is that the city is responsible. There's a big collector there. There's like a big receptacle underground with a cover on it that the oil is supposed to collect in, and the city is supposed to come in and clean that out periodically. So
And they did. and it cost $13,000.
Yeah.
Then it filled up almost, within a week after that. And so they got this they tried pulling the oil out with a, what do you call those little skip loader? Or maybe something, I don't know, is that small enough? Anyway, so they got it in and they were pulling the oil out with the skip loader, and that only cost, I don't remember what it was, $3,000. But in another week, it was full again. And so they don't really know what they can do because it just keeps filling up.
Yeah.
And they said that the last guys who tried to cap the thing said that, well, that wasn't, they capped their thing correctly for the little well, but this is a natural seep. And so they say it's just gonna keep doing this.
Yeah, I don't want to have my planning commissioner role to spill over into the Carpinteria Birdwatchers meeting, but I had many questions about that project when it came before the Planning Commission, and I think I have many more questions now. But yeah, that's very unfortunate that owl was harmed by that, and one way or the other we'll get that cleaned up, and it's just sad that it had to come to this. Here we are, like 2 cleanup projects down the road from the original problem, and it's still a problem.
So they, how they take aluminum things and put it around fields so to scare the birds away. Do you think that would help with owls? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know about scaring them. I mean, I think just some sort of physical barrier is what we need to just keep them from getting in there into that oil, or if they can just clear the oil out. But yeah, I realize it's a bigger problem.
So it's
okay,
right
well,
where the two, it's a little bit on the road side of where the 2 eucalyptus lines come together.
Right, yeah.
I
recognized it from your photos.
Well, I'm telling people if they want to go look at the apple.
Yeah. So so out at the Carpinteria Bluffs, kind of close to the Johannes flower fields there, the agricultural fields that adjoin the bluffs. There's those 2 rows of eucalyptus that come together, and right on the inside of that angle where the 2 rows of eucalyptus come together is where we're talking about. Okay, well, thank you again for sharing that, Andrea. It is very sad, but good for us to be aware of it and keep track of it, and hold the city officials accountable for taking care of the problem. Yeah, Brody, I see you have your hand up. Do you have something else to share?
Can I share the lesson goldfinch pictures that I've taken?
Sure. So were you able to, can you put them in an eBird list? Is that?
I don't know how to put them in an eBird list because it's not rare, so it doesn't really let me add a picture or anything. So I don't.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, you can add photos to eBird list for any species. It doesn't have to be a rarity. What you would do is you do it after it's been uploaded onto the eBird website. So take your list, create your list, post the list, and then on the eBird site, logged in as your username, you can go examine the list, and there's a edit media, I think it's called. And then if you have the photos on your computer, you can just drag them onto this appropriate species and it'll upload them.
Okay.
And the eBird folks love it when you do that. They really like getting that. That's really good data for them. Okay. And if you do that, I will gladly share it with the group. And if you share the list with the Carpinteria the Carp Birdwatchers eBird user, we'll cover your list in our meeting.
I can check it right now. 1, 3, 2. Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up for this meeting, and we'll get to this next week. So this will be something fun to look forward to for next week. Does anybody have any requests or suggestions about a group of birds you want to talk about next week? I mean, I can, we'll come up with something either way, but if you have something in particular you're really into, let us know.
Okay. Okay, sign in. So the username is.
So you would log in as your account, right? So are you signed in already?
Okay, we'll figure it out a different time. Okay.
So thank you, Brody. Really appreciate that. And thank you everybody else for being part of the meeting. And we'll have another meeting on something next week. Check out the blog at carpwithoutcars.org and we'll put a topic there.
Thank
And
you, John. I think what I'll do is I'll just change the announcements to say go to carpwithoutcars.org and check the Carp Birders link for this week's Zoom link.
Yeah,
That
because
way-
because I don't post the link until shortly before the meeting. On
Yeah,
the day.
and the papers like to have it like the Sunday before the Thursday,
Yeah.
so.
You can just
I'll
give
do it
them.
that way, so. Okay,
Yeah, that'll work. Okay, well, thank you again, Butterfly, for helping to promote the meetings. Thank you, everybody who participated. And I will see you all next week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye. Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys.